I call myself a Rolling Stones fan, and I'd like to consider myself part of the vinyl community, but I don't even have Exile on Main Street on record. Actually, it would be 2 records. Shameful! Hello again, I'm Robert Fitton, and yeah, I'm pretty ashamed of all of this, but I don't have any of these on vinyl records, but I do have them on these little CDs. I'll explain, but yeah, very shameful. Like this debut from the Cars. Love this album. One of my favorite albums. Playing this is like playing a greatest hits almost. I mean, you don't get much better debuts than this. I used to actually have this on a record, but then traded it in. That's pretty shameful. Remember the days trading in the albums and getting CDs? Oh, I won't need these anymore. Oh, these don't sound good anymore. And then here we are years later trying to get our collections back. Now, the reason I don't have one of these on vinyl record right now is because I'm really wanting to get the Nautilus version. There's a Mobile Fidelity Sound Lab one. I don't really care about that one. I've never been a fan of those. Has nothing to do with the digital thing. I've just never really been a fan of theirs based on my experience. They sound kind of bassy and blankety. But the Nautilus one, I understand, sounds excellent. Now, I would settle for like a regular Electro run as long as it's not like Columbia House. I'm a little too good for that. But, you know, I'd settle for an Electro one, but these things have really shot up in prices. I remember when this used to be a $2 album. Now it's like a $30 album, and I just can't bring myself, I don't know what it is. It's my brain. I can't bring myself to pay $30 for the Cars debut. But yeah, still just, I just have this on CD. Traded in the album. Traded in the album years ago. Very, very shameful. Black Sabbath Paranoid. I just have the old CD of this. I never did get around to getting the vinyl version because I really want the Vertigo one like everybody else. And I don't have any Vertigo Black Sabbaths, so this one was my holdout. I have all the other Black Sabbath with Ozzy on records, but I do not have Paranoid. I'm going to hold out, and eventually one of these days I will find a nice Vertigo UK pressing of this, and that's the one I'll have. Or if not, I'll just get the reissue with that big Warner logo here. And yeah, probably we'll just end up doing that one of these days. The Allman Brothers, brothers and sisters, have a lot of their early stuff on vinyl records. I really enjoy listening to the Allman Brothers, especially in that format. But this was actually one of the first CDs I ever got for my birthday, right after I got a CD player. So it does hold some sentimental value, but for some reason I've just never got around to finding a decent pressing of this for a reasonable price on a vinyl record. Usually these are all beat up. Like Rolling Stones records are always beat up. Have you noticed that? Like Frank Zappa albums are always beat up. Leslie Gore albums always beat up for some reason. They're always torn up and all scratched up and everything. Monkeys are like that. Blondie, Parallel Lines. I have 2 CDs of this. 2 CDs. But do not have this on a vinyl record. I have, you know, their entire output basically of the 70s. And even Auto American, for God's sakes, on vinyl. But not Parallel Lines. And this is my second favorite Blondie album. One of the reasons is because of the whole Heart of Glass debacle. There's 2 versions of the vinyl record of this. One has the 5-minute and 50-second disco version of Heart of Glass. I don't want that. I want the original, just regular album version. It's like 3 minutes, 3.5 minutes, something like that. It's on this one. I don't want the Best of Blondie version with that whirring sound effect in it. I just want the good old album version, and it's really kind of hard to find that one. I wanted Santa Maria pressing too because I want the best sound. But anyway, so I still have just these CDs. Ordering from Discogs, you'll be like, just go to Discogs and get it. But the thing with Discogs, if you ever ordered from Discogs and tried to get an absolutely specific pressing, it rarely works out, at least in my experience. You get stuff that the label isn't even the same. I made a couple of videos, I mentioned in a couple of videos how I got records that the covers weren't even right. I mean, it's not about, you know, zooming in and finding the exact right matrix and, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to send that. I was 1 number off. Now, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about completely different labels, totally different covers. You rarely get the exact pressing you want ordering from Discogs. And from what I understand, some of the Blondie Parallel Lines are actually mislabeled. So ones that actually say they're the album version turn out to be the disco version. I don't like the single version either where they cut out the word ass. I just want the album version of Heart of Glass on Blondie's awesome Parallel Lines albums. And that's kind of what I'm talking about. Just kind of common albums that you should be able to find a lot of places. I mean, there's a lot of 60s psychedelic, obscure stuff that I really want on vinyl that I don't have, and 70s like German progressive rock that I don't have on vinyl. But I'm not necessarily ashamed of that because those can get really, really expensive, really hard to find. If you're ordering them from Germany, then you're going to pay an outrageous amount in shipping these days. So I'm not necessarily ashamed of not having those. But yeah, I really should have Blondie Parallel Lines and the Cars debut and Black Sabbath Paranoid. I mean, come on. The Saints, man, this is like one of the best punk albums of all time. I'm Stranded. I just never got this on vinyl. This one actually is kind of expensive to get, and I understand that you want the Australian one, you don't want the US one because it sounds a lot better, again with the shipping prices, But this has a lot of great bonus tracks on it. That's an argument for the CD. I mean, it's like a CD and a half, really. Album and a half with all the bonus tracks. It's got their whole EP on here. But what an incredible album this is. I love the Saints. I'm Stranded. But I don't have this on a record. I would love to get that one day. Like I said, an Australian version. Supposed to sound really good. But don't have it. But I'm not quite as ashamed about that one because that's getting up there in expenses. David Bowie, Station to Station. Would love to have this. But the album is the original version. It's all black and white with that big white border. I like this. I like the color album cover. And this is only available in a limited run from Ryko back in the late 80s or early 90s. It's very hard to find like this. But it's out there. I'll get it someday. But right now I just have the CD of this great album from David Bowie featuring, Stay and TVC 15 and Golden Years, of course, is on here. But, David Bowie, Station to Station, the Thin White Duke, popping balloons. Paul McCartney and Wings, Band on the Run. This is like my favorite Paul McCartney and Wings album, and he's made some bad ones. This is a good one. You should really check this out if you're a Beatles fan, especially. Band on the Run, awesome. Kind of a takeoff on the Sgt. Pepper cover there with different celebrities on there. But, it's from 1973, and the thing about this is, from my understanding, again, the U.S. pressing doesn't sound very good. It supposedly has really bad intergroove distortion from what I've heard. But I don't want to get the UK pressing because the UK pressing doesn't have Hell on Wheels. So it's like, which one do you want? Neither one of them. But I do understand that the reissue, that's actually through CBS in the U.S., from 1981 is the way to go. The half-speed master. I've never seen it anywhere. Maybe someday I'll, take the plunge and order it from like eBay or Discogs or whatever. I can't stand ordering from Discogs anymore because they always mess things up. Not Discogs, but the sellers on there. But I'm looking for the half-speed CBS master of Band on the Run from Paul McCartney and Wings. Otherwise, I don't have this on a vinyl record. I really should. That's the thing. And by the way, I'm not talking about like releases that I think everybody should have. These are ones that I'm just ashamed of myself that I don't have because I feel like I really should have these, but I don't. I don't like those lists where it's like 10 albums every vinyl owner should have. You know what records you should have? The records you want to have. That's the record if you don't like the Beatles at all and you don't want any Beatles records, then you shouldn't have any Beatles records if you don't want any. I mean, there you go. I mean, I have some records that I don't like. Beach Boys, Pet Sounds, Steely Dan, Asia. But I have those because I got them in like a box of other records. And it was situations like that. Or I got it thinking it was going to be good. And besides that, if I didn't have the Beach Boys, Pet Sounds, what would I have to bitch about? So, I mean, but if you just want records that you want, ignore those lists that tell you, oh, every vinyl collector should have this or this. Don't be ashamed of that. I'm just ashamed because I actually love all these albums and really want them on vinyl records. And it's just a real shame that I don't have them. However, I do have Barry Manilow's greatest hits on vinyl. Double album, people. Double album. Very, very proud of that. The Who with Who's Next. Don't have this on vinyl. There's a long-standing argument on the internet about what the best pressing is, and don't get this one and that one, and this one lacks the power and the passion. And if there's one thing I can't stand, it's a lack of power and passion. So I'm trying to find out which is the best. Some people say actually it's a German one from this particular era. Some people say you definitely don't want the Sky MCA Cloud US one, but maybe the first US pressing, no, that one doesn't work out for you. You want the UK one. So if anybody knows like what's a nice one, I don't have to have the best. I don't have to have audiophile quality, but still trying to find out what at least a decent copy on vinyl of the Who's Next is, and maybe someday I'll be lucky enough to get that. But yeah, the Who's Next. This CD actually has, again, a lot of great bonus tracks. Would hate to give those up, but still very ashamed that I don't have like this iconic album with its incredible cover art on vinyl. Bob Dylan, Highway 61 Revisited. I often talk about my Bob Dylan period as the one a lot of people like. Those 3 or 4 albums right there with Bringing It All Back Home. This one, Blonde on Blonde, the Freewheelin' Bob Dylan. Love all those. Never have seen a good copy of this, an original. I've seen a couple where they have like the Columbia and a ring like from the late 70s or 80s, but I've never seen a good original 2-eye Columbia of this in great condition in stereo, and that's what I want to get, so I'm stuck with this CD. How shameful. I'm ashamed of myself. And finally, as I mentioned in the opening, Exile on Main Street from the Rolling Stones. I had this, and again, just like the Cars, traded it in, got the CD. Ooh, it's going to sound so much better. This was, you know, the late 80s, early 90s, and here I am stuck with the CD of Exile on Main Street. I want to, the reason I don't have this on vinyl, I want to get, okay, the Monarch pressing, because those are the best. If you know anything about Atlantic type pressings, you want to get the Monarch. That's the one where the Led Zeppelin manager went into the plant all the time and made sure they were doing everything right to specifications. So Monarch pressings on Atlantic and Atco, way to go. But Rolling Stones on Monarch, and I want the original pressing, and I want the one with all the postcards and all the doodads and all that in great condition. That is not an easy thing to accomplish for under, like, you know, I don't know, $50 or something like that. So Exile on Main Street from the Rolling Stones. I just have this pitiful, pitiful little CD. I'm so ashamed. Shame! Like Evelyn Champagne King shame. Like the Motel shame. Like I'm living in shame like Diana Ross and the Supremes. Like shame, shame from the Magic Lanterns. Like shame, shame, shame from Shirley and Company. I'm so ashamed. Thanks for watching. Please consider giving this video a thumbs up if you're not too ashamed. Yes, that's actually authentic. I really did that. I'm just trying to keep it real.